This is a unique lookout tower on the wall, which could accommodate 30 to 40 soldiers, with stone beds made of masonry situated around the wall. A round fire pit was placed in the center to keep the soldiers warm in winter. Neatly arranged windows were placed all over the walls, allowing for 360-degree surveillance. At the top of the lookout tower, there is a large number of weapons and equipment. Come to the starting point of the Ming Great Wall, Shanghai Pass. In order to resist the impact of the tidal wave, each piece of foundation here is made of 3 tons of granite, and even used the butterfly-shaped iron ingots to firmly link together, and in the foundation of the top inlaid with 9 layers of stone bricks, so as to make it impregnable. Inside the Great Wall of Ming, you will see the Great Wall of Earth built during the Western Zhou Dynasty, with a layer of reeds interspersed with each layer of rammed earth. However, the reeds were not used for warmth, but to make the wall more hydrophobic. Due to the emergence of heavy weapons such as cannons in the later period, the earthen Great Wall became unbearable. So the ancients began to use green bricks as the foundation. The center gap was filled with cobblestones, and then paved with green bricks, which is the Ming Great Wall that has been preserved nowadays. Although there will be a lookout tower at every distance, there will still be places where the line of sight is obstructed. So what should we do? Combined with previous combat experience, it was finally decided to cut down the trees within 3 kilometers and build new branches in places with complicated terrain. When the enemy attacked, the most direct weapon was the bow and arrow, and of course stones would be thrown at the enemy to block the attack. Although there were cannons in the Ming Dynasty, due to the lack of technological sophistication, they could only serve as a deterrent in the end.
Pay attention. The video shows a guy freezing to death on the street after getting drunk. When people found him, his body was already stiff. His clothes had been stripped down to short sleeves and underwear. It's logical that a person who is freezing should wrap his clothes tightly around his body and huddle together to keep himself warm. But strangely enough, almost every person who froze to death took off their clothes before they died. What's the reason for this? It turns out that these people had a common form of hypothermia. We know that the normal body temperature is around 37 degrees Celsius. If the body temperature is lower than 35 degrees Celsius, then we will suffer from hypothermia. Our body shivers and trembles uncontrollably to release heat, to maintain our body temperature. If at this time we can't get out of the cold, the body may have to redistribute its heat. The reason why some people take off their clothes before freezing to death. In fact, it has a lot to do with our brain. When the body is in a cold environment for a long time, the body may become stiff. The superficial blood vessels will also contract. At this time, the human body decisively abandons the brain and prioritizes the heart. Due to the lack of heat and oxygen to the brain becomes fuzzy. In this state, the body will release a lot of energy in a short period of time. The blood in the body will quickly return to the limbs. The blood vessels will start to expand for the second time. The brain feels very hot all of a sudden and sends instructions to the body to cool down. And in this case of severe hypothermia, people will experience paradoxical undressing. That is, those who are about to freeze to death will take off their clothes and increase the risk of cardiac arrest, and eventually die with a smile on their face. That's why most people who freeze to death are naked.
Why is it that when you drink a glass of water, the urine that comes out is not only yellow, it also has a foul odor? Here's a video with a little bit of flavor. Let's watch it with your best friend. When you drink a glass of water, it travels down your esophagus to your stomach. It stays here for a while and then goes with the food to the small intestine. The small intestine absorbs most of the water and passes through the bloodstream to the kidneys. The kidneys are our body's superfilter. It cleans the blood and helps us filter out waste and toxins, and eventually creates urine. From the kidneys to the bladder through the ureters. The bladder is the home of urine, where it's temporarily stored. As to whether or not you want to pass it out, depends on your mood. Then why is the urine not only yellow? It also has a pungent odor. The key lies in our body's bile. The human liver can secrete 800 to 1,000 milliliters of bile every day. And bile contains bilirubin. It's the main culprit in coloring feces brown. But most of the bilirubin is excreted with the stool, and the remaining bilirubin is absorbed by the intestines and converted to urobilin. It travels back through the bloodstream to the kidneys, and when it meets the urine, it will naturally color the urine yellow. The reason why urine has a foul odor, it's because our body releases hydrogen sulfide when it breaks down proteins, and it has a strong, rancid odor. When these compounds break down in nature into what we call a foul odor, if the stored urine reaches its limit, the bladder sends a signal to the brain, causing the bladder's urinary muscles, and eventually pours out through your 10-centimeter long gate. So do you know why you shake when you pee?
Have you ever wondered how this trick is done? It's one of those things where you know he can't actually be making the salt disappear, but it's still confusing to look at. Well, it turns out that the simplest explanation is the right one. Look closely at his hand during this shot. Do you notice how he sort of grabs his thumb here? Well, this is because he's using a prop called a dofi finger. He holds it in his fist like a cup, fills it up with the salt, gets it onto his other thumb, and then grabs it off his thumb back into the first position. Watch it again and see if you can notice. A few days ago, I showed you how this trick was done, and I was wrong. This is how I originally explained it. Cane, base, rods, back brace, harness. All that's left for the magician to do is use his core strength to pull his legs up. Well, this magician, known as Special Head, left a comment on my TikTok. He also made a response video proving that my theory is wrong. There appears to be no base or harness. In fact, Special Head has some other videos online where he just touches someone's head and levitates. So what's going on here? What's the real explanation to this trick? The answer is that I have no idea. Have you ever wondered how this trick is done? It's one of those things where you know it has something to do with his cane, yet it's still confusing to look at. Well, it turns out that the simplest explanation is the right one. There's a YouTube video of one of these magicians getting ready for this illusion, and from what we can tell, there's a metal base that's connected to a metal pole, which is connected to a seat. The illusionist wears thick clothing, and the entire structure is covered by some kind of cloth, revealing what looks like only a cane.
Have you ever noticed when an aircraft carrier's plane takes off, a board rises from the back? It looks like a wall, separating the plane from the rear. So, what is this board, and what is its purpose? Before the carrier aircraft takes off, the engine is already running at full speed. At this time, it ejects a high-temperature, high-speed airflow. Taking a small jet engine as an example, when we fix the jet engine and pile a layer of snow more than a meter thick behind it, as the engine starts. After a while, the middle of the snow pile begins to melt and eventually collapses. Or, if you place a human head model behind the engine, when the jet engine starts, a terrifying scene occurs. The skin of the model is torn off in an instant. Imagine the danger the jet's ejected airflow poses to the planes, vehicles, and personnel behind it. According to tests, at a distance of more than 60 meters behind the largest jet, the measured hurricane-level airflow moves at a speed of up to 190 kilometers per hour, and the two GE-90 engines of the Boeing 777 combined can produce about 900,000 newtons of thrust. This force can be lethal. Hence, the aircraft carrier's deflector was born. It redirects the airflow in a non-dangerous direction, i.e., upwards. Moreover, the surface of the deflector must be cooled to withstand the aircraft's tires rolling on it before it can be lowered. So to address the heat issue, in the 1970s, people installed active cooling systems. Behind each deflector, a grid-shaped water pipe circulates cooling water. The mother rhinoceros looks confused and doesn't know what to do. A black cloth quietly covers her eyes. Before the rhinoceros could react, the man quickly tied the black cloth. Because if the rhinoceros is stimulated, it will resist fiercely, will be violently attacked by the mother rhinoceros, just as the men were controlling the mother rhino. A baby rhino suddenly jumped out, thinking that the humans are trying to hurt his mother, so he charges at them. But his small body was pushed back by the men. The baby rhinoceros was furious. Then the men pressed the mother's body down with chainsaws in hand. They frantically cut the rhino's horn. Is it possible that these people are poachers? It turns out that these people are staff of the Animal Protection Society. They cut off the horns of wild rhinos, although it seems to be cruel. But in fact, this is to protect the rhinoceros, because many poachers want to fight for the complete and precious rhino horn. They cut off half of the rhinoceros face. This has resulted in a large number of rhinos losing their lives. That's why the staff of the Animal Protection Society has to cut off the horn before the poachers do, so that the poachers can't profit from it. It's also a way to protect the rhinos from being killed. The staff carefully control the power and angle of the chainsaw, so as not to hurt the rhinoceros, and the horn can be safely cut away. It's the same texture as a human fingernail. The rhino's horns are coated with medicine, will be released back into the wild. The mother rhinoceros probably never dreamed why her head has become lighter, and the baby rhino is happy to see its mother safe and sound. There's no trade, there's no killing. So do you agree with the Animal Protection Society? The person who invented the airplane engine was undoubtedly a genius. The principle is quite simple. By compressing and heating air and then expelling it, you can propel an aircraft forward. At the front of the engine, there is a large fan that serves to intake air. Behind the fan, you have the low-pressure and high-pressure compressors, which progressively compress the air into intermediate and high-pressure stages. The high-pressure compressed air then passes through the combustion chamber. After mixing with aviation kerosene and igniting, the gas temperature increases significantly. These gases are directed towards a turbine. The turbine consists of many blades on a wheel. When the gas flows through the turbine, it drives the blades, causing the turbine to rotate. Finally, the high-speed exhaust gases are expelled from the tailpipe, generating thrust. Let's go through the process together. The fan intakes the air. The compressors gradually increase the air pressure to temperatures of up to 450 degrees Celsius. After mixing and burning with fuel, the combustion generates high-pressure, high-temperature gases of around 1,700 degrees Celsius. Since the turbine is connected to the compressors on the same shaft, the turbine extracts energy from the gas and can, in turn, drive the compressors and the fan, or other components like the propellers on a helicopter. This is the reason why airplane engines can't start on their own. They need an external power source to initially spin the turbine to a certain speed before ignition. Eventually, this process enables the aircraft to take off.